Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Sri Damodara Janani, Lord Damodar's mother, by Sri Ram Swami. We have been reading from 7th chapter, Mother Yashoda conquers Krishna, and yesterday it was all about Damodar Leela as it happened on the Diwali day. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripa tamham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Parmananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. So everybody was calling Lord Damodar Damodar after the Damodar Leela because he was bound by the dam, which is the rope, around his belly, which is the udar, so Damodara. As time passed and Damodar Leela became a fond memory, Krishna would treasure that name as one of his favorites. At present, though it sounded like an insult, and he made known his displeasure with a wry face, rising to her feet, Yashoda Devi turned to her gopi friends and with a victorious smile invited them to help her. In the company of laughing neighbors, she returned to the palace, leaving behind Krishna, who was dearer to her than life. As with the milk boiling on the stove, Yashoda again left Krishna's company because she considered the service of cleansing his home to be more important. Service to Krishna takes precedence over being with him. The moment Yashoda and her friends left, Krishna cast aside his sad face and false tears. He assumed a composed demeanor and filled the courtyard with the moonlight of his smile. Making the best of his predicament, he boasted to his friends, "Just see how I kept my mother at bay." The boys answered, "It was a memorable exhibition. Now tied to this mortar, what will you do?" Krishna smiled lovingly at his friends and then looked down the hill to the two Arjun trees worshipped by the Brajvasis. Out loud he said, "Let me think," and to himself he thought, "Whatever I do, I must also deliver those trees." With Mother Yashoda and her entourage gone, the monkey friends of Krishna approached to show their sympathy. A few screeched disapproval and then sat down at a distance from the playful cowherd boys. What a shameful thing to do, tie a prince to a mortar. Some demigods and sages were of a similar opinion. What a shameful thing to do, tie the Supreme Lord as if he were a naughty calf. Even if the gopis were ignorant, did fate not consider that he was being belittled by such treatment? Thus a controversy arose between celestials. They exchanged views on whether by allowing himself to be bound, Krishna had diminished or enhanced his stature as the Supreme Lord. The demigods agreed that all of them up to Lords Brahma and Shiva were under the control of just a plenary portion of Krishna, the Paramatma. What then to speak of being controlled by Krishna himself? The demigods continued to converse, each expressing their own thoughts. So this little boy who is now bound to the mortar is certainly the indisputable controller of countless diverse universes, and yet he remains fully independent and the object of affection for hundreds and thousands of goddesses of fortune. How then? Please continue. If he is omnipotent, self-sufficient and self-satisfied, how then is he hungry for milk or annoyed when his mother stops feeding him? Another Deva added, "Well said. How is it that we see him running in fear of his mother, crying like an ordinary child, and when caught, overcome by some ropes? We have agreed earlier this is not a drama on part of the Lord, but expressions of emotion with which he fully identifies. How then is one who is self-satisfied, that is Atmaram, also hungry, angry, fearful, light-fingered and distressed to the point of tears?" Good question. Demigods are always eager to understand better their Lord, to bask in the Sankirtan of his attributes, Having contacted a train of thought that was like a shower of heavenly nectar, they became so engrossed in talking about Krishna that for a while they forgot his activities below. One great Deva addressed the others. In this regard, let me quote that was written by a personal associate of Lord Krishna. Please do. This Vaishnav author is a great soul who has reached the far shore of devotional knowledge through service and surrender. He once said, although he is full in himself, the Supreme Lord nonetheless wants all the living entities to surrender unto him so that they may engage in his service. Thus he becomes satisfied. Although he is full in himself, he nonetheless becomes pleased when his devotees offer him patram pushpam phalam toyam, a leaf, flower, fruit or water in devotion. Sometimes the Lord, as a child of Mother Yashoda, requests his devotee for some food as if he were hungry. Sometimes he tells his devotee in a dream that his temple and his garden are now very old and that he cannot enjoy them very nicely. Thus he requests the devotee to repair them. Sometimes he is buried in the earth and as if unable to come out himself, he requests his devotee to rescue him. Sometimes he requests his devotee to preach his glories all over the world, although he alone is quite competent to perform this task. All the demigods were silent, drinking these words like a thirsty man devours water, and there was more. Even though the Supreme Personality of Godhead is endowed with all possessions and is self-sufficient, he depends on his devotees. Therefore, the relationship of the Lord with his devotees is extremely confidential. Only the devotee can perceive how the Lord, although full in himself, depends on his devotee for some particular work. This is explained in Bhagavad-Gita, where the Lord tells Arjun, Nimitta matram bhava savyasachin. O Arjun, merely be an instrument in the fight. Lord Krishna had the competence to win the battle of Kurukshetra, but nonetheless he induced his devotee Arjun to fight and become the cause of victory. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was quite competent to spread his name and mission all over the world, but he still depended upon his devotee to do this work. Considering all these points, the most important aspect of Supreme Lord's self-sufficiency is that he depends on his devotees. This is called his causeless mercy. The devotee who has perceived this causeless mercy of Supreme Personality of Godhead by realization can understand the master and the servant. The Deva finished speaking and all were silent. After a moment he concluded with his own summary. We all know that the Lord is complete, he is Purna, but he can only be so if he is not just independent but also dependent. Otherwise, how is he complete? Indeed, his independence is shown by his desiring to be and by his being dependent on others. Who are those others? He does not seem to be dependent on us. He is dependent on his devotees. Are we not devotees? We are. But the Lord is dependent on pure devotees, or to be more precise, he is dependent on the love of his devotees. Prema alone controls him, and those who have prema, they alone are his overlords. Do you have prema? A moment of silence gave answer to that question. A senior demigod continued that our Lord is bound by the ropes of his devotees. Love is his supreme ornament. It is not his defect. Love is the essence of his spiritual chit potency, and as such it gives him the greatest pleasure, for like us he is always seeking pleasure raso vaishaha. This dependence on his loving servant is called bhakta anugraha, his mercy on devotees. And effusive, they were added, if the Lord was not merciful, then his heart would not be soft, and if his heart were not soft, then he would not be all attractive. Exactly how could he be devoid of the fountainhead of all good qualities? Mercy, if the absolute truth were not compassionate, it would be impersonal in the way that Mayavadis postulate. The Pumsvana vow confirms that it is through his mercy in the form of dependence on his devotee that the Lord assumes his opulent powers and divine qualities. Does the Lord distribute his mercy equally to all his associates? Not as far as I know. Correct? As we all know, the Lord reciprocates proportionally. Ye yatha mam prapadyante. That means that his mercy is proportional to the surrender of his devotees. And he also continues to remain independent throughout all exhibition of dependence or mercy. Oh yes, the Lord's omnipotence is not compromised. He simultaneously always remains independent. How amazing, is he not wonderful? He certainly is. While sleeping in the lap of his mother, his all cognizance is fully awake. For example, although he is tired, he will still give his mercy to the two Arjun trees, Kuber's cursed sons. Full of admiration, a demigod effused, if it would seem that Lord Krishna's disposition to be controlled by his devotee increases his magnificence. Indeed, it doubles his godliness. Correct, but remember that the Lord's quality of Bhakta Anugraha is not exclusive to Lord Krishna. It is found in Lord Narayan as well as in the Lord's incarnations. Let us recall what Lord Narayan told Durvasa Muni, Aham Bhakta Paradhino He Aswatantra Eva Dvija. I am completely under the control of my devotees. Indeed, I am not at all independent. Moreover, when the Lord places himself under a devotee's control, he is not enacting a drama. His dependence on his well-wishers is his all-encompassing reality, a dependence that he experiences through and through. As a result, he becomes afraid and hungry. Yes, if a devotee threatens him, he must be afraid, and if a devotee wants to feed him, he must be hungry. Sa mam vimohayati. This is bewildering to me and to us all. The demigods looked towards little Krishna in appreciation. Bound to the mortar, Krishna had still found ways to play with his friends who were pure devotees wanting to play with him as a child, and so he was doing just that. And as Krishna relished his play, the sound of his childish laughter reached to the heavens. Krishna appreciated the demigods' prayers, but he wanted them to give recognition to his mother. His displaying the Damodar Leela was possible only by her grace. Situated in the demigod's hearts in the same way that he was seated in the dust of Gokul, Krishna inspired the Devas to praise Mother Yashoda. Has anyone ever bound Krishna before? Not that I can remember, but others have been the object of his mercy. We know that the Creator has been favored by the Lord, and the Lord also stood night guard for the Pandavas like a common watchman. But this is different because the loving devotion of Raja's queen far outstrips that of Maharaj Yudhishthir and of Lord Brahma. She was able to do something that no one else has ever done before or will do in the future. The demigods hushed and searched for a glimpse of Mother Yashoda to purify their eyes and hearts, but they could not see her. She was out of sight, diligently cleaning up the mess made by her darling son. One Deva broke the silence. Sandarshata. What we have seen this exalted gopi achieve is her exclusive prerogative. There is no devotion greater than hers. By the Lord's grace, we have seen the upper limit of bhakti and the degree to which it controls him. It ties him up in the way that one would tether a bull to a stake. Awed by Mother Yashoda's good fortune and by the privilege of witnessing her devotion, the demigods offered prostrated obeisances in the direction of a palace. By so doing, they hoped to receive her blessings. Seeing the respect given to his mother, Krishna was pleased and thought, I have appeared here in Vraja to let the world know how I am enslaved by the love of pure devotees. I want everyone to know how devotees' prema awakens in me divine characteristics that bewilder even the most learned scholars. I am the eternal desire tree that fulfills everyone's cravings, but without the comforting touch of my mother, I am incomplete. I am satisfied in myself and lack nothing, but when the gopis churn yogurt thinking of me, I become hungry. I am personification of transcendental goodness, but if my friends taunt me, I become angry. I am the proprietor of all things, but to enjoy the special relish of eating others' butter, I steal. Fear personified fears the slightest movement of my eyebrows, but when my mother raises a stick, I am afraid. Although I cannot be contained within the mind of the accomplished yogi, still my mother catches me. I am the condensed form of transcendental bliss. But when my mother neglects me, I am unhappy. And although I am all-pervading, without beginning or end, still my mother has managed to tie me to this mortar. These contradictory characteristics arise when my divinity is confronted with and submits to the love of my devotees. When the demigods see these paradoxes, they become bewildered or sometimes forget that I am their Lord. Indeed, the influence of loving devotion is so powerful that I myself forget the influence of forget my divinity and think that I am the object of my devotees' love. Thus I become a plaything in their hands and I love it. And this brings us to the end of this chapter. Mother Yashoda conquers Krishna. And it has been an absolute pleasure reading this beautiful pastime, and the description has been so mesmerizing itself. In the notes, it's written here that the labor arises during the process of worship of the Lord. The Acharya calls it Bhakta Nishtha Bhajanotha, which can be translated as the devotee's steadiness in worship. Labor, then the concerted effort a devotee exerts in being steady in worship. Mother Yashoda's steadiness meant that she had to accept all kinds of conditions, setbacks, weariness, and criticism. Still, she labored on despite these conditions. The potency generated from this labor constitutes one of the finger spaces. The second finger space, and one that is a consequence of the first, is Krishna's mercy. It is called Darshanotha Swanishtha Kripa, or the mercy invoked in the Lord by seeing the labor of his devotee. When Krishna sees a devotee's resilient effort to serve him, then his mercy is conjured up and he becomes a servant of his servant. By these two, the Lord can be bound. When they are absent, he remains independent and self-sufficient. By this pastime, Lord Krishna demonstrated to his mother how he is bound up by love, but more to the point, he has demonstrated to practicing devotees the standard they must aspire to and achieve to attain the status of his associate in Gokula. So we will continue with the reading next time. We'll begin chapter 8, Sri Damodara's mother. Thank you for joining. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.